So the joke that I wanted to tell you is
welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage project. This is not easy.
No.
I'm Norm.
I'm Adam.
And we have a special guest this week. We're joined by Rebecca Watson.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
But really, most importantly, David Bowie died.
I know.
Wow.
What?
I know.
I thought we all had an agreement as a culture, as a people, as a species, that if anyone was going to be granted immortality, it was him. I think we even made a movie about it.
That's right.
Well, the good news is that there is a very good possibility that there's a parallel universe where David Bowie does, in fact, live forever. I was hoping it was ours, but you know what? It's not. And we just have to accept that, unfortunately.
It came really suddenly. Now, we're recording this the morning after the news broke. He just turned 69.
Yep.
He just dropped an album.
Right.
And the album has all sorts of new meaning and significance now that it happened.
And he's been battling cancer for 18 months. It's just, I'm gobsmacked and nearly
Fuck
speechless.
Cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He made that album, knowing that it was going to be his last, released it on his birthday, knowing, like, for fans, so that he would have a chance to release one more album. And I was listening to Lazarus today, which is all about, being, dead. He's going to die. And it's so moving. And what really blows my mind is the whole album is brilliant, I think. But he made that while he was literally dying.
I know.
And he still nailed it.
Well, this is the thing is that Bowie, the place Bowie occupies, and we say this when a giant of an art form passes, it's, how do I put this? There are certain artists, most artists fit like a keyhole into the culture, but there are some that are the door. Michael Jackson, Bob Dylan, and fucking David Bowie. When I go, every time I hear something like Changes or Space Oddity, I'm gobsmacked by both how innovative it is, how poppy it is, how Kurt Weill and theatrical it is, and how important it is. Every single one of these just feels every single one of his songs, whenever I hear them, feels completely current.
Yeah.
He was like a hallway full of doors because he changed.
Right.
He never rested.
Yeah.
He was always whatever cool was because he made it cool.
And having been born in the 80s, it is completely mind-boggling to me that Space Oddity at one point didn't exist and David Bowie had to come along and make it. It wasn't, nothing like that was out there.
Yeah.
He needed to do it.
And of course, in his presence in movies, from Labyrinth all the way to The Prestige, playing Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
Labyrinth, one of the first movies I ever saw. I was 5 when it came out and scared. Can I curse?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Scared the living fuck out of me. I had nightmares about David Bowie for years.
Yeah. No, I know. And a genuinely wonderful actor, a genuinely terrific personality. I mean, you never felt like he was rigorously controlling his brand. You just felt like he was existing. We were in his world. He and Iman would walk around and everyone would just be like, how is such beauty possible? It is literally like we're being allowed to view unicorns in the wild as they move around.
A friend of mine just said she was hanging out in a bar once when they walked in, and it was like in the Old West when a gunslinger walks in and the entire bar just falls silent. It was like royalty walking in.
So this week, the amazing and wonderful Sketchfest is happening in San Francisco, and it's taking over San Francisco and taking over some of our lives for days here and there. We all have good friends who come into town, and we get to see them and spend time with them. And yesterday, there was a lot of time spent with Ben Acker and Ben Blacker from the Thrilling Adventure Hour, Mark Gagliardi, Hal Lublin,
John Hodgman,
Rhett Miller, John Hodgman, all of these wonderful people who, like, I love this week because Janet, Cole, and David bring all my favorite people to San Francisco. And last night, a friend of mine was telling me they were at a party, a loud party, and another friend came over and he thought he heard David Bowie is here, which is just weird enough during Sketchfest. I mean, I've had the strangest people walk in this shop during Sketchfest. just to be possible.
Yeah.
And then the real news
Yeah.
sunk in. And like he was telling me this morning, he's like, I had the best day yesterday. And now this is the only thing is Bowie's dead.
Wait, I know we're all skeptics, but maybe it was his spirit showing up in all of the places simultaneously that he knew he was wanted.
Well, so this is where I am totally able to come up with the literary analogy for spirit and say, that people do live on in the way that we think about them and their import into us and the way that they alter moments of our lives. As soon as we're done recording this, I'm putting my phone on my stereo and I'm going to be working in this shop, blasting Bowie as loud as I can possibly do for the rest of the day. And I'm going to live inside a little Bowie.
Yeah.
And he made it okay for you to feel weird. I think Danica was telling me this yesterday. When you watch him in movies and listen to his music and saw his public persona change over the years, and you're growing up and you feel awkward and confused about your own life, you look at David Bowie and you're like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And
he was gender fluid before gender fluid was a thing.
He was gender fluid and I've often enjoyed saying that I like to feel like, and by best, I can be a permission machine for a 10-year-old me to go ahead and let the freak flag fly.
Yeah.
But Bowie's confidence at that fluidity, I think he announced that he was gay in 1973 as part of Ziggy Stardust. And there are some accounts that it was a cynical attempt to get more attention for the album. But really, in the arc of his life, none of that matters. He really was so weird and so bizarre and so confident at it that he transcended any opinions you could have about it, because at the same time it was totally public. It was also completely personal and it was his, and he owned it totally.
Yeah. I watched Man Who Fell to Earth in college, and I remember thinking I've never been so bored by a movie that while still finding the central protagonist so completely captivating.
Well, and let's talk about, I caught a bit of the Golden Globes last night.
Mm-hmm.
So Lady Gaga won for Best Comedy Actress, for Best Actress for American Horror Story.
Oh.
Now, I haven't seen this show. Friends of mine who've watched it have said she's unbelievably terrible. And but watching her speech, she's often, I'm bringing this up because Lady Gaga is often compared to David Bowie for like the weirdness and the persona that goes way beyond music.
Yeah.
And I say, besides those words I just spoke, no way. She stood up there at her acceptance speech, and it was like a liturgy of need, and I felt gross watching it.
Yeah.
It was just theater, and there was nothing personal really about it. There was nothing. There was no cultural connection about it. It upset me.
Speaking. Sorry, what were you saying?
I just wanted to offer a brief wimpy defense of Lady Gaga, only in that I enjoy her music as pop, and I enjoy her outward presence. Like I enjoy the theatricality that she brings to things, and I like her particular viewpoint on women and on being, thin, and on being a central character, that she has to do. But, I agree with you, but I also think that it's tough to live up to any comparison to somebody like David Bowie.
Absolutely. Right. No, you're right. It's an unfair comparison. And to be clear, like I put Paparazzi on repeat on my iPhone for months.
Right.
And I love a ton of her music and actually have enjoyed it immensely. But there's a point at which it feels a little like you're grinding the same mill wheel on my time. And that's what last night's speech felt like.
Yeah. And what she is it's an act. When you talk about David Bowie, there's nothing ever that came across as phony about him.
That's
Everything
really
he did,
true,
he
even
did
as
with sincerity.
theatrical as it was.
Yeah.
It was very honest.
Yeah. And that's a shocking. It's really shocking how rare that really is, that someone can bring both that theatricality and yet you feel like you're seeing something wholly genuine.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Well,
I'm
speaking
sorry.
of Golden Globes, did you guys also see that The Martian won for Best Picture in the comedy slash musical.
Really?
Because, well, Golden Globes.
Here's the thing. Just if you're going to be cynical about the math, I'm sorry to interrupt, Noir, but if you're going to be cynical about the math, The Martian was never going to win against The Revenant.
Right.
And yet it's a very funny movie with some big laughs. So they stuck it in comedy. And then this was the really shameful part, is that Ridley Scott got up to accept the award for Best Picture and went, comedy, which is like, I am totally dissing all of these actual comedies that I'm up against.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, absolutely.
Did it beat out any? I have not paid
I don't
attention
know what
at
it was
all.
up against.
Oh God, I'm terrible
Maybe
about
it was
this.
a weak.
Okay.
It was a weak field.
I wasn't paying that close attention.
Okay.
It's the way the system works, right? The producers at Fox submitted for this category because, like you said, they knew it's a good movie, but that kind of genre film usually doesn't win.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be disdainful of The Martian. I loved it, wonderful movie. But when it comes to best comedy, that feels like gamesmanship as far as I'm concerned.
But also, I kind of like that because the entire awards thing is such a sham.
It is.
Why not have someone blatantly play the game?
So what you should do if you want to watch this is watch Jim Carrey.
I heard he had something
was
good to say.
Wonderful. And Jim Carrey awards speech is a YouTube hole you can go down because he's lambasted the MTV Awards for like, hey, call someone up, tell them they're gonna win so you can blackmail them into coming. That's what he said as he accepted an award on stage.
That's amazing.
At the MTV Awards.
All right. Well, me and Jim Carrey, he did that whole thing with Jenny McCarthy. By that whole thing, I mean he married her or whatever and then was super anti-vaccine. So
I know.
I kind of hope that he left Jenny and the anti-vaccine stuff behind. I don't know.
One can hope. But,
I don't know.
Maybe he's commiserating with Bill Maher. You never know.
Yeah. Come back to us, Jim Carrey. Come back.
Well, Golden Globes not only recognizes film, but also television. And that's where Lady Gaga won for her performance in American Horror Story. But a lot of great TV shows last year. And last week, Rebecca, Adam, Will, and I discussed our favorite movies and shows from the past year. But one show that we did not get a chance to discuss that everyone here has seen was Jessica Jones.
How does Jessica Jones not come up in best TV shows of the year?
It wasn't.
Not all of us had seen it at that point.
Right.
But now everyone
is it
has
not
seen it.
nominated for anything, or is it?
I think it's probably for next year.
It's probably for next year. Okay.
It was the best show that I've seen in forever.
We talked about the fact that so we covered this, but just to reiterate, I was so joyful when I realized by the third episode that I had yet to see two white people kissing, and that it was two more episodes before that happened, that everything was normalized, and this is how the world heals.
It's a casually diverse show.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's not forced, it just happens, and it's brilliant.
The show's been out for a while. It's on Netflix as part of Marvel's their superhero shows like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage is the one coming up next. We can't recommend it enough.
And
but
Patsy, Trish is also Hellcat. Will also end up being
well,
Hellcat.
Do we want to just roll into a Spoilercast discussion of the show? What can you remember?
By
cool
all
with that.
means,
Let's
absolutely.
do it. Yeah, so if you haven't seen the show yet, now is the time to pause, go watch all 13 episodes, and then come back as we'll be talking about it.
Now, if you're a functioning human being, I will tell you that you might find it difficult to binge watch Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
I personally
was about to say the same thing.
Was unable to watch more than one episode at a time, and I needed at least half an hour, if not a day sometimes, to breathe. It is a very slow-moving show with tons of character building, and this is a complaint that I have heard, and I don't disagree with it. There's not a tremendous amount of plot going on, and yet the dive that it makes into what it is to survive an abusive relationship, which is pretty much what this show is all about. All the characters are surviving varying degrees of abusive relationships, whether it's their mother, their ex, their current, their sibling.
It's the sort of show, I agree with you. I could do up to 2 episodes at a time, but only near the end when I was like in the mode. But it is the sort of show, I had this thought early on by episode 3 or something, like, well, this should be wrapped up soon. Right. What are they going to do for the next 6 episodes or however many?
She could just punch him.
Right. But that's where I think the brilliance lies is in the fact that, yeah, you're talking about an abusive relationship, and those are the sort of things that from an outside perspective seem to have very easy solutions. Just leave. Oh, did he hit you? Just leave. But that's not the solution, and for a number of reasons that the show explores very well, I think.
And it uses look, all superhero stories, the superpower is the stand-in for our self-esteem. And what you're saying, why not just leave? The most amazing part is you're really clear very quickly why she's blaming herself. Even as you understand she shouldn't. And so does she. You also understand deeply why she's doing that. And that's an impressive little bit of narrative magic that they're achieving there.
Yeah, and you know that she knows it because she's telling other characters this, and while she's internalizing her own, it's my fault, she's repeatedly telling people, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I believe you. She's saying the things that she needs to hear to other people. It's so affecting.
I want to also give credit to to David Tennant, and
the scariest villain I have seen in a long time.
I mean, one of the great things I think the show does is make you feel so nervous and on edge the entire time, almost getting just a taste of what the character of what Jessica Jones is supposed to be feeling. Because I think is it the very first episode where the girl Hope. Or is it Hope? She kills her parents.
Yeah.
And just that moment, okay, you can't trust anyone in this show, just like she can't trust anyone in the city. Right. And you get that feeling throughout the entire show.
And the casting of Tennant, perfect, because one huge part about what makes an abuser so successful is that they don't look like monsters and they don't act like monsters generally on the outside. And David Tennant perfectly encapsulated a monster who is so likable.
Right.
He's incredibly likable and charming and good looking.
But let's talk about the way he's revealed, because I also was very impressed with that. You don't see him for at least 4 episodes.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Daredevil and the Kingpin. And it's great because they let the presence without him actually being physically present, that looms.
Yeah.
And I thought it was even more intense with Jessica Jones that you don't see him at all, but the first time you do see him is only from the back of his head. And this scene is one in which so the villain, if you haven't watched the show and you're listening to this, well, just welcome. The villain can control what people want to do by giving them instructions. So he can say, take that coffee and throw it in your face, and you will throw it in your face. And he walks into this house and says, I'd like to stay here. And the person who answers the door says, yes, please come in and stay here. And then he says to the children, go into the closet and stay there. And because they've already introduced to you the fact that when he gives you an instruction, you want to fulfill it over all other biological and emotional needs. You will soil yourself. You will kill yourself. You will shoot your parents. By the time you see him do that to this family, it's disgusting. Like, it's really upsetting.
I think it's an important distinction because they could have written a superhero, and in the comics they could have written a superhero or a supervillain whose power is just to make you do things. Like if it was just give a command and that action happens, like you can't control yourself. But what's really important is that his power it's a psychology. When he gives a command, you feel like you want to, you're compelled to, even though all logic says otherwise. And that's the toll. It's not that you did something, but then you also felt like you wanted to do it above everything else.
Yes, exactly.
And
you go ahead.
I really loved how he was introduced as being, in the first episode, he first shows up inside her head. And as someone who wasn't terribly familiar with the comics, and also knowing that the character might be a little different, my first thought was, oh, he's psychic and he's flashing into her head somehow. But eventually you learn, no, that's not a superpower. That's what happens in an abusive relationship.
Right.
He gets into her head, in a very non-superhuman way, but in a terrifying way. And that's what makes it terrifying, is that that's not his superpower.
I also like that they didn't wait to reveal that abusive relationship for long. In the comics, that's supposed to be a big plot twist.
Oh, is it really?
Where you find out, like, because Jessica Jones, the comic series called Alias, written by Brian Michael Bendis, back in the early thousands, and she's a PI, but you never know why she quit being a superhero till late in the series, and it's supposed to be this big reveal that she was abducted for years and forced into servitude for Kilgrave, the Purple Man, but they get right to it.
Yeah.
And they let that be the story as opposed to, and then it's an important story to tell. And so there's time to flesh it out. I also love that Kilgrave is like every monster.
Kilgrave is the villain.
Yeah, Kilgrave, he doesn't know he's the villain.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a hero. And
well, he's the physical embodiment of the one question narcissist test. Are you a narcissist? And the narcissist will 80% of the time say yes, because they don't view the things that make them a narcissist as negs.
right.
Right.
Yeah. And again, that's a human trait. And to me, that's a much more realistic villain is one who doesn't think of themselves as the cackling, evil overlord. He thinks that he's doing what's best for Jessica, and that's what an abuser does.
Yeah, and he comes from himself a pretty messed up childhood,
which is gray, actually.
Very gray, yes.
And I like that it's left gray. There are times when you sympathize with him deeply, and then there are times where you're like, wait, was he lying about that? Did he?
So this whole thing, I really want to give props. Like, it's a great time to love superhero movies, because not only are the movies themselves great, but the people that they're casting, from Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., even the especially the Hemsworths.
How dare you, sir?
No. I like all these men and women. Scarlett Johansson. They're all actually terrific actors with great directors making lovely product. And then Marvel delves into television. Daredevil was really wonderful. I think some of the dialogue in Daredevil is really difficultly bad. At the same time as Vincent D'Onofrio does a world-beating villain in Kingpin, the Kingpin I always wanted from the Frank Millers that I was reading 30 years ago. Jessica Jones, which is created by Melissa Rosenberg, I would love to see her original pitch documents, because she's clearly influenced by Chandler with the smoked glass window on Jessica's apartment door. She's quoting Chinatown. I think of the broken front door as Jack Nicholson's bandaged nose.
Yeah.
Again, Vince Gilligan played around with this in Breaking Bad. That this character is, there's a line. Chandler wrote an essay, and I've quoted it on the podcast before, The Simple Art of Murder. But one of the things that he said, and in it, he illustrates the things that make a proper hero of this kind of noir tale. And Jessica Jones is absolutely noir.
Yeah.
And one of the things he says is the character has a range of awareness that startles you, but it belongs to them by right, because it belongs to the world they live in. And this is a really interesting thing. I've heard friends of mine say she's never asking for help. Now, there's a bit of that's like Miller's Crossing, where the main character doesn't let anyone pay his debts. That's a very Chandler Marlowe kind of thing. And Jessica Jones falls right in line with that in this terrific way, especially the wonderful relationship she has with Luke Cage. I think that's a very sad and intense relationship, and I look forward to seeing how it develops next year. But this is just like, I can't gush enough about all of the aspects of this show. And I agree with people who complain that there's not enough plot. It is a very slow moving show. And I think that they were addressing a sort of a deep foundation here. And I can't wait to see what they do for another season.
Yeah. I don't care about the plot thing. Like the character development is just so satisfying to me. And when you talk about the noir tropes that it pays homage to, what spins it all on its head is that Jessica's a woman, and in noir films, she would be the one in the slinky dress, but she's not. She's the man. And throughout Jessica Jones, one thing I didn't really notice until I was most of the way through the series is that she never once uses her sexuality to get her anywhere. Never once.
Yeah.
There's one moment where she needs to get some information from some nerds in a science research lab that may have been taken over by Kilgrave, and you see her drag a guy out and throw him up against the wall. And in any other show, she would have been appealing to her sexuality, but she didn't in this.
Yeah.
And I really admire that because it makes it more appropriate to the noir aspect, where she's the central character, she's the detective, and also it's immensely satisfying as a woman to see another woman doing the things. Growing up, I would pretend to be all the male characters. I would never play as the female character. It didn't even occur to me. It didn't even occur to me. I was Han Solo, And so to see a woman inhabiting that role so completely as a damaged, but ultimately victorious, hero, it's just so immensely satisfying.
And there's some allusion to her sort of discarding men towards the beginning of the show. Then as she dances into this relationship with Luke Cage, neither of them realize that the other has superpowers. He is iron skin. What do they call
Unbreakable skin.
Unbreakable skin, yes.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, and the show has some very graphic sex in it. She and Luke are in bed and things are getting very vigorous. And he says, I'm going to calm down, I might break you. And she says, no, you won't. And he said, yes, I might. And it's this moment that is so, again, these allegories about what we reveal to each other, about how we reveal ourselves to the people that we belong with and the people we choose to spend our lives with. It's really lovely. I haven't felt like that duality so deeply since Buffy.
Yeah. Oh God. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you brought up Luke Cage, I cannot wait for the Luke Cage TV show. But my first thought when I saw he's going to get his own show is they're going to angel him. We're never going to see our Buffy and Angel together. They're going to be apart, and I want them to be together.
I totally do too. I totally do too.
But I know that, slight spoiler, I saw that he is going to be paired with the nurse from... What's the actress's name?
Rosario Dawson. Right, who was also in Daredevil.
Yes.
And she makes an appearance towards the end of this.
Great.
Isn't she amazing?
Yes.
Amazing.
So
Claire
I am
Temple.
looking forward to their relationship, but also at the same time, it's going to break my heart because Jessica.
The best jokes last night at the Golden Globes were America Ferrara and Eva Longoria getting up and telling you all the Latina actresses they're not.
Right.
Oh, God.
Which is self-aware, because when their nominations were announced, they mixed up America Ferrera with the actress from Jane the Virgin.
Right.
Oh my God.
And so they both go
brilliant.
up on stage and they say, I'm America Ferrera, I'm Eva Longoria, not Eva Mendes, and we're both not Rosario Dawson.
Yes. And then one of them was like, well done, Selma.
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing.
Really, really awesome and great.
Can I just say too, Jane the Virgin, great show.
Is it really?
It's a great show.
Okay.
I would never have given it a second look, but a bunch of my friends recommended it. It's goofy, but it's a lot of fun.
I watched, so I'm delving slightly again off towards female protagonists in shows that are good. I watched the first episode of Casual last night.
So good.
Jason
What's the show
Reitman's,
about?
Jason Reitman's show on Hulu. It is a show about a 39-year-old woman who is recently divorced and trying to find love again or find herself again. And she has a sort of dysfunctional relationship with her brother and her daughter. They've pilot. I have repeatedly been on this podcast talking about pilots that I was like, yeah, watch the pilot of that. I didn't like it. I got to stop doing that because the pilots
are
always
bad.
weird.
Yeah, except for the one that you guys read yesterday as part of
my God.
Sketchfest, which you guys, if the podcast is up by now, can we talk about it? It's not a secret.
No, if you guys performed it already.
Yeah, we did. So at part of Sketchfest, we did. I participated in a cast reading of the Dead Pilots Society, which is a podcast that reads pilots that were bought but never produced. And one of them we read yesterday with John Hodgman's "The Only Child,"
So
which
goddamn
Hodgman
funny.
himself wrote. Hodgman is a friend of ours and a lovely, lovely man, and as crazy smart as anybody I've ever known.
Yeah.
And wrote this beautiful pilot about himself at 14, in which within the pilot, all the kids he's hanging out with are played by children. And at our reading, we had many children, including a couple of people I already knew, but Hodgman playing himself as an adult playing 14-year-old Hodgman. And it was...
So I laughed until I was crying. And what I really loved is that he introduced it. I love the whole concept of this podcast. I can't wait for it to come out. But he talked a little bit about why it didn't get picked up. And he said that they pitched it to, I think it was FX, and FX was like, we really like it. And they bought it in the end, but they said, we tend to go edgier. And he said, so you're saying that a 45-year-old man almost kissing a 13-year-old girl is not edgy enough?
I was thinking about that too, because there's this point towards the end where they're slow dancing, and I was like, this is going to be really... Actually, it wouldn't be that hard to shoot. The director in me is thinking, right, you do the slow dance where they're both sort of arced away, and then it's not too creepy, especially if the girl has her own sort of... You cast somebody and you direct them well, and then that won't be too creepy, but he's right.
Yeah, so edgy.
Not edgy enough.
I don't want to... I don't want to spoil. There's a couple of amazing, jaw-dropping, spit-take jokes within this really poignant, beautiful coming-of-age pilot that I don't want to spoil, so I won't, but we'll include a link to that podcast on Tested, either with this or as soon as it's up.
What's the name of the podcast?
The Dead Pilot Society.
Dead Pilot Society with John Hodgman.
I think we're thinking of maybe the same spit take near the end.
Yeah. No,
So
that towards the end, but also the earlier one, I can't even do it.
Yeah,
I don't even
experience. I love the experience of listening to people read scripts, because it's not something that you see.
I didn't think I would like it, but it really worked well. Because I know there's another podcast that does a similar thing. I can't think of the name. It's on Earwolf.
Is it the one with the blacklist, where they do the full blacklist scripts?
Yeah.
They read them totally. Interesting.
But
that's a show where I watched the pilot and I was like, this is a terrible show. I couldn't bear it.
Poor doughy James Spader.
I love James Spader.
I love him too. But
Not the Blacklist. The TV show. The movie scripts from the Blacklist.
Right. That Shane Black, like the best unproduced scripts in Hollywood.
Yes.
Right.
I
understand where the confusion. I'm like,
with you.
James Spader.
What are we talking about? All right.
Yeah.
I think that's as good a place to stop as any.
Yeah, go watch Jessica Jones. What are your hopes? Well, and with us, what are your hopes for season 2? Because it ends definitively.
It ends definitively because Jessica both literally and figuratively finds her self-esteem, finds what it is about her power that she can utilize. The fact that at the end, the way she convinces Tennant that he has control over her is by telling him the truth. And I found that so moving that he's like, well, you wouldn't have said it that, like, her poker face is to reveal all. And that's what undoes him at the end. I think the second season is going to be about her genuinely exploring her power and pushing outward to help others and the complications involved in that. That it's not as simple as you can reach out and pluck someone up and they'll be okay. I think that I feel like they're going to continue the theme of damaged relationships that harm us have long tails, and they have tails that can affect others. And when you reach out to save someone, you form a relationship with them and you can become affected by those relationships. And I feel like that's what the second season is going to explore.
That's so well put. And I agree. And I really, one of the things that I loved most about that ending was it brought her relationship with her sister, her adopted sister. Their relationship, I mean, it's like Frozen, in how suddenly we haven't talked about it at all, but to me, it's a huge part of the show is their bond as women and as sisters and as friends.
And it will be as superheroes too, because Patsy Trish becomes Hellcat, and that's a whole nother.
So I'm really looking forward to exploring, because they're two very different people who have this friendship, and to me, it's one of the best examples of a friendship between two women on screen right now. And so I'm really looking forward to them exploring more of the all of the facets of that complicated relationship.
It passes the Bechdel test.
It does.
Which also,
Flying colors.
and not only does it pass, it also makes you realize that that's the test itself. It passes it so immediately that it becomes not important.
Right.
That it's just about how strongly these characters are written and whether their motivations. Like there are scenes in the show where the test is passed, but the scene may not be so great. And there's some scenes they're super fantastic.
Totally. Yeah.
I want to see more Carrie Ann Moss.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Carrie Ann Moss, fantastic.
God, we didn't even talk about Carrie Ann Moss.
She's going to be a supervillain in the next.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Probably going to be even worse than Kilgrave.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Loved her.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
me. This
joining
was
us.
fun.
Let's
I
have
hope
you
this
back.
is the last time.
Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah. Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm at Rebecca Watson on Twitter, or I run Skepchick, skepchick.org, my network of critical thinkers.
Awesome. And you'll always be able to find us on tested.com. Adam, of course, at Don't Try This. I'm at Enchan. Please rate our podcast on iTunes. Leave your comments, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.